Hi, everybody. This is Martha Creek. To contact me, it's marthacreek.com. And that's my email, my phone number, other things are there. And this is a podcast with me getting to interview people that are near and dear to me that also represent something that I highly value, which in this case today with my dear friend David Dafoe, who is the founder, the entrepreneur, and the leader for a company called Flavorman, and now Moonshine University, and Pro-Liquitech, formerly for that. And now a new iteration of that I want him to speak about in the podcast today around innovation and entrepreneurship. So these are intended to inspire, to get empowered teachings to the whole of the planet, to bolster you, to encourage you to follow the calling in you, whatever drivenness you have that's innate in you, for you to follow it, and to know that somebody out there, people like me and Dave Dafoe, are rooting you on, cheerleading you on, and also hopefully that our lives can be a representative for you, a model for you to know that there's a way to it and through it. So mentoring moments, Martha's mentoring moments. And today with us, dear and special friend, David Dafoe. So welcome, Dave, and thank you for taking the time out. I happen to know that you carve a few hours out a week for sane, sensible, sabbatical time for you, and you've used that time today for this interview. So I thank you twice.
You're welcome, Martha.
So tell us about, as we start about this, Dave, that I want to speak about today, entrepreneurship for sure. You're calling for that, even the fulfillment of entrepreneurship, as well as some of the boogers around it and the challenges about it. Because I hear people often, years ago, I've been self-employed for 16 years. Don't recommend it. So don't go away saying Martha said go get self-employed, because it ain't so. As I was planning, though, a course for my life that included that, and I didn't know if it was going to be true or not. It was really a laboratory to test that in. Other people said, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm like, well, don't go quit your job until you've, kind of gotten the saddle, and tested this a bit. So I imagine you hear it quite often too, that people want to do what you did. I want to do what you did, Dave, or I want to do what you do. So enlighten us, Dave, on the fulfillment of entrepreneurship and the challenges of entrepreneurship. Let's just lay it out here. Tell the truth to whoever's going to listen today.
Okay, well, the truth is I became an entrepreneur out of boredom. So what I found out over, the course of my life so far is that when I get good at something or really good at something, I'm done with it. I want to move on and do something else. So I started out, I went to Miami University up in Oxford, Ohio. I have a degree in zoology, and I was going to be a doctor because my grandmother wanted me to be a doctor. And when I was a kid, she told me I could do anything I wanted to do. And it was basically her idea originally that I should be a doctor. There were no professionals in our family, and she thought I should be the first. And I agreed with her. I should be. So I went to Miami University. I decided on a degree in zoology because to go to medical school, you had to have a science degree. And that seemed like the best one. So that's why I picked it. And when I got almost finished with school, I decided I didn't want to be a doctor. And I had done everything. I was a candy striper when I was 14 in Cincinnati at Christ Hospital. Worked all the way as a volunteer until I went to Miami. And when I went, they told me that they would pay me because I told them I couldn't afford to drive back and forth from school to work on the weekends. So they said, we'll pay you. So I did all of that work. I even took Latin for 7 years because, they told me, to be a doctor, Latin was a good language to learn, and it is. But when I was a senior, last semester, I decided I wasn't going to go to medical school. So I came home and told my mother. My mother was, she had a way with words. And I told her I didn't know what I was going to do. And she said, well, I believe, young man, that with your degree in zoology, you will be fully qualified to shovel shit at the Cincinnati Zoo. That was my clue. I had to go do something. And I was still working at the hospital. And one of the head nurses helped me find a job. Her name's Sandy Schoenberger, still a very good friend of mine. she was determined I wasn't going to waste my degree. So she helped me get this job at this flavor company in Cincinnati. And when I interviewed, I found out through the interview that I was a super taster. So I have this ability to taste and smell more than most human beings. So they taught me how to do that, to develop flavors using that skill. And about 3.5 years, I was really good at it. I actually got promoted 3 times while I was there. And I decided to take a job at a distillery. So I headed off to Louisville to work at, one of the world's biggest distilleries here. And I was really good at developing products. So I developed a lot of products for them through the 5 years that I was there. And in fact, I was really successful. And the more success I had, the more bored I become. So I decided, hey, I could just go out and do this stuff on my own. So I did it part-time. So when you said, you just don't quit your job and go out, I didn't. So I got some consulting business that I worked on, and I was allowed to work on any products, any beverages that I could develop that did not contain alcohol. Because working at a distillery, they didn't want me to develop products for competitors, which makes good sense. So that's what I did. And I worked about probably 10 months as a consultant, and I loved it because I could do whatever I wanted to do. And it wasn't just one kind of product. I worked on juice beverages and coffee beverages and all kinds of things. So that's really how it started, Martha. I thought I was going to be a full-time consultant developing beverages for companies all over the world. Yeah. It didn't turn out that way.
Yeah. Amen. So I want to go back to a few pieces here. So I'm imagining who might be listening to this podcast, and I hope it's every age group. I hope it's young ones, 9 years old, 10 years old, 16 years old, 18 years old, that senior in college who goes, no way, no how can I do this? Although I've spent 7 years at this, I can't do it. So, and then people today that says, this is no longer aligns with me. So I think we may have to tell people what a candy striper is.
So back in the old days, when you were a volunteer at the hospital, any hospital, probably around the country, you wore a uniform that was red and white. It looked like a candy cane. And so we had to wear I wore a shirt that was a candy cane kind of a shirt. And they were little girls, we were 14 or 15. They wore like dresses with little blouses, white blouses with skirts that had the shoulder straps and everything, and those looked like candy canes.
They're called pinafores or something. So let's just put this in here this is a man here that was willing to do what in the hell ever it took to have a job, to get a job, and to go start laying the foundation for what he was going to do in the future. And if it requires you to wear a red and white candy striped shirt and go do what you had to do in that job, it's like, then yes. So I think this is a missing piece, Dave, honestly, for people, that it's like they want the outcome, they want the lifestyle, they want what comes at the end of it, and we're lacking some stamina and some uncommon motivation to kind of, this may not be popular, but to pay the price.
That's right.
To put skin in the game over it that says, and if you can get the other without doing this kind of work that Dave is describing here, and the penance of this, or whatever how you see it, the hard work that it takes to have a foundation like this, then Godspeed, go do it. Carry on with your bad self. But for those others that are like, I'm wanting that, I hope this is encouraging you to get in there with the nuts and the bolts of it, and get in there with those dumb shirts you may have to wear, or dumb schedules you may have to use, or some going out on Saturday night, or whatever it is for you young ones, to get in there and say, this calling is so important that I'm going to do whatever it takes.
And that's, Martha, that's true. I grew up very, very poor. We had free lunches, and we have talked about this many times. It feels funny telling you this, but we got welfare sometimes, and nobody gave anything to us. So my dad worked 2 jobs. My stepdad worked 2 jobs. And I just felt it just was natural to me. Like if I was going to be a doctor, well, I had to do something. I had to learn what it was like at a hospital, what people did and those kinds of things. So I think it comes natural. And I think it's true that, now we find that all the parents that I know, they want their kids to be better off than they were. But what they don't realize is that they worked their butts off for what they had, and they just want to hand it to the kids. And then when the kids get at an age where they're coming to look for a job, like at Flavorman, they don't want to start out, washing the labware, the glassware, emptying the trash, doing those kinds of things while they learn a skill. They want to be, all of a sudden, they want to be a project leader. And it's a tough discussion, but it comes up almost every time. Listen, if you want to be a project leader, then these are the things you do to get there. This is the path. And we have to describe that path more and more often than we used to, in the past. When I started this 30 years ago, I think people were more prone to want to learn a skill. And now it's not so much like that.
Yeah. Well, and what would you say then to somebody that has a dream like this, a vision for this, a calling, so to speak, of this? What could you say to them today in this podcast to close the gap on that to take down any kind of magical thinking, which doesn't mean not to dream, but to take down this fantasy-based, mythical-based, fairy tale-based, I'm going to go from point A to point Z because of my charm and wit, or my acute physical physique, or whatever it is, or I'm going to have to get in there and wash some glasses in order for me to progress, in order for me to move up that chain. So what would you say to folks?
I tell you this, so I love dreaming. I'm a big dreamer. And I already see some things that I want to do in the future. And I know what the steps I'm going to take to get there. And I know that if it's a dream and I'm a fairy godfather, and I think I'm going to put wings on and fly to my dream, it's not true. I'm going to put legs on and hands on, and I'm going to work to get to my dream. I'm not flying there. There's no easy way. So it doesn't happen the way you want to, but the dream's spectacular.
Yeah.
So I'm working on a dream right now, as you know, and we're working our butts off to try to make it happen.
Yeah, and I want to get into that, of course, too, because it's very true with me. And I sold Mary Kay Cosmetics. I had 3 jobs and went to college full time. So really 4 jobs and going to college full time. And people would refer to me as lucky. Martha is so lucky. And my Mary Kay sales director's name was Veda. I love her still till today. And she would spin around with that look and that sassy red hair, and she would say, "Did you just call Martha Creek lucky? Martha Creek is not lucky. Martha Creek, W-O-R-Ks. And if you would W-O-R-K, you would have some L-U-C-K. So what you're describing is waiting on the luck of it and not denying there's luck. I mean, there's grace, providence. There's people, windfalls. There's people that flew in the door and got to sit at the biggest desk there. Who knows? So we're not denying any of that. We're laying out a course plan, though, that for Dave was very meaningful. For me has been very meaningful, that it came brick by brick by brick, by washing glasses, chop wood, carry water, chop wood, carry water. And so whatever we've had or whatever direction we were going in was not, did not exclude that. And a dream was pulling you, Dave. A dream and a vision has been pulling you. And, other teachers say it as either pain will push you or a vision will pull you. And it's been absolutely inspiring, invigorating, and exhilarating for me to watch you in your visioning and to be pulled by vision. And it's not been pretty all the time, or at times. It's not been free of its struggles and the wrinkles on your eyes. And when I see your face sometimes and how tired you are to go, that you've taken on a vision too big for some to bear. So talk about then what's come of it. Before I go, though, the other thing I want to dip into is when you hear something, in this case from your family, in a family that didn't maybe value, mine didn't value education. They hadn't gone on to further education. My mother had my dad 4th grade, my mother 8th grade. And then my brothers both quit school when they were 16, as soon as they legally could back then. So that I wanted to go to college also. And I was going to go to college come hell or high water. And I didn't know how, but I was going, and I figured out a way to do it. So then to have somebody, in this case, your mother, to say, you'll be a great shit scooper. So speak about where that could have gone the other way, that in some way you took that shit and made fertilizer out of it. you took an impulse, you took an allure to be mad, to be frustrated, to go the other way. You could have gone into a big addiction, or you could have really jumped off the rails there. And instead, you turned that around. You use that to fertilize your spirit and your dream somehow. So speak about that, like the value of that. If there's choice, then there was a choice there in that for you.
So my father died about 2 months before I was born in a car accident. And my grandmother, which was his mother, took me under her wings, and she tried to teach me all the things that I think that she thought her son or my father would have taught me. So she was really special in my life. And she told me when I was really young, and she told me a million times after that, that I could do anything that I wanted to do, anything. And she made me believe that. And I still believe that today. I can do anything I want to do. And she'd always say, you get to a certain point in your life that's like stepping stones. And you go to school and you do really well. And then you go to the next stepping stone, which is maybe you go from a grade school to high school. And you do really well there. So now you have that stone to stand on. And if it doesn't work out well, you can go back to the other stone that was very solid for you. And your whole life can be these, stepping stones or stairs. And so I always felt like, when I was doing anything, and I always wanted to be the best, because on the other side of that was my mother, who was very, very negative. She just couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel on anything. And so, and I'll tell you, that's reflected in my brothers and sisters. But, they didn't quite have the guidance that I had with my grandmother, the relationship that I had with her. And so I think that, I could have been like my mother, but the truth is we were so poor and, living paycheck to paycheck. And when you're a young kid, you don't realize what's going on. But as you get older, you start to realize, like, this isn't a really good life. Just everybody's worried all the time, and you can't spend money on anything, or you can't do anything. There was so much lack in our life when I was growing up. And I thought, I had my grandmother on one side telling me, you can do anything you want. You just work hard for it. Those stepping stones. And I had my mom and my stepdad, just so had this poor consciousness, and they would settle for anything just to pay the bills, and that was enough for them. And I could do one or the other. And I didn't want to do the settle for things, because I wanted to do other things. Like I said, when I was young, I didn't even know I was poor. And even in high school, I didn't realize how poor I was, because all we knew were other poor people and other poor things, and you don't realize until you get older. And then went to college, and then I saw all these people that their attitude was a lot of positivity, and they had families that were very I don't want to keep using the word positive, but that's the best word to describe it. That their parents come down to visit them, they send them candy or little gifts in the mail, and they wrote back and forth. And I got none of that. And so the more and more I saw that and lived that, the more I just wanted to move forward. I wanted to be somebody. I wanted to do something where I felt good about myself, and then all of the accolades and the positivity would come to me, and I could give it back out. And so that it was as easy as that, Martha. It was just, there were two paths there. I could take one or the other. One felt really good, and one felt really bad. And I don't like bad. I like good. So that's really how like my attitude, that's where it came from.
Yeah. Okay. So Dave, could you speak about specifically, we're talking about the hard work, and that could scare people off. That's not really, mama called it work brickle. You're not work brickle enough. So talk about the hard work is worth it, and the life you get to live, the way you have built wealth, the way you get to use that wealth to give back. And specifically then, in your own mind, in your own words, what are the benefits of all this hard work now? 40 years, Dave, right? 40 years?
30.
Of hard work. Well, since you're 14 years old.
Yeah, well, 50. No, not yet. I'm sorry, 40, you're right.
40 years of hard work. and of hard work and taking chances and being sensible and not just jumping ship, doing it part-time, being integral in it so that whatever the requirements were for you to follow, you were mindful and attentive to those. So then what's been the benefit then? What have you inherited as a result of this hard work? What do
Okay.
you enjoy?
So two things come to my mind right away. The first is personal for me, is that as you know, I've developed beverages for other companies. So we develop beverages and then they show up on a store shelf. And the very first product I ever developed for a company, I went into a store and saw it for the first time. I cried my eyes out because I couldn't believe that I did that. Like that was mine. Like, you know, it's one thing when, you know, we're doing it in a laboratory or, you know, we're in production and I could see it. But when I saw it on a store shelf with a price tag next to it, I cried and cried. It was a convenience store. I felt a little ridiculous, but I had so much pride that it didn't mean anything, that I didn't care if anybody saw me or not. So, and now I've seen that 100 times and I still have that feeling when I see something in the store. I know when I have guests over the house and I pull out something out of the refrigerator, yeah, I developed this. And I still have that pride that I did it. So personally, you know, for me, that's probably part of why I love what I'm doing or love being an entrepreneur. But the other part is how it makes me feel about how it affects other people. And I remember, so right now I have 46 employees there's 3 companies. We're all in one place, but there's basically 3 companies. And I remember going out in the parking lot one day. It's been probably 10 years ago. And the parking lot's pretty big. And I looked at all those cars out there and I just stopped in my tracks. And I thought, I'm responsible for all these car payments. Like, this is what I have to do. I have to keep this company going because I'm responsible for that. And, you know, and then you start thinking about it. Well, I'm responsible for the mortgage payments and their kids and if their kids have to go to the doctor, the dentist and school and all those things. And so I was able to give a career, not give it. I was able to offer a career to over 40 people. And actually it's been in the hundreds now after all these years because some people have gone and moved and started other jobs, have become, you know, tops in their field as well in the food and beverage industry. And there's not much, you can't do much better than that. You know, so I know how I feel inside about myself, but then I can feel that same way about all the people that I work with. And I love it. And, you know, if nothing else, that sustains me in this company is that, you know, I just look around and, you know, I can see with my own eyes. Now I have glasses on those eyes most of the time, but I can see that, you know, I made a difference in a lot of people's lives, a lot. And the companies that we've developed products for, I can't tell you how many people that our company have made millionaires because we've developed beverages for them and they go out and sell millions and millions of dollars worth of product. And, you know, I just love that feeling. I mean, it is truly joy, that feeling.
Yeah, it's beautiful to hear, honey. And I know that, you know, there's a sage saying, a metaphor around, we will never sit under the shade of the trees we planted. And I think that those that's even similar to us are not going to wait around for the shade. We're going to be just planting trees, knowing somebody gets to sit under the shade of these trees, or this tree is going to bring beauty, shelter, order, comfort, something, connection to people. And
can I stop you there? Because I've got to tell you something right there. When you talk about the shade of the trees, we're starting a new venture. And we're going to take part of what we do is develop flavors. And we're starting a new venture called Flavorlogic. And you're going to be able to order flavors to use at home, to cook with, to bake with, and, you know, make soft drinks out of, to do whatever you want with. But the reason we picked the name Flavorlogic is because I read this article about trees. And that's why I had to stop you. So as it turns out, trees actually talk to each other through their roots. So their roots grow together, and they call it something logic, and it might be tree logic actually, where these trees know if they're too close or too far away, and could they have more sprouts, and how big their leaves can get and all that. It's all about the logic of the roots of these trees. And so I said, that's a perfect name for this new company called Flavor Logic. And it has to do with trees. And you saying that about a shade tree about knocked me off my chair. So it just fits right into this conversation about.
Well, I'm glad you would stop me, because I've studied, I may have read what you read, and I've got a very visual. I often pick trees as visuals for graphics, for logos, for artwork, for advertising and all that. And it's the logic of that they know if they're not strong enough to stand up. So they have to put their roots together. They have to grow into each other's root systems and do that for them to stay stronger and taller too. And that's a part of it. And it's what I've witnessed in your companies, that you don't have 3 solo standing companies. You have three companies that share some kind of similar root system that understands they're all stronger, they're more sustainable, more thriving because of that shared root system. So it's beautiful. And hopefully that'll inspire somebody to go look up that story and read it themselves. And that we have then, that's not stopped you. And I remember the day you've told me that before, Dave, that when I may have been with you when it stopped you dead in your tracks to say, I'm responsible for all these car payments. And I went, no, you're not. No, you're not. Snap out of it. You're not. You didn't sign those notes. You didn't buy those big old things. You didn't. So, but I'm not missing today what you mean, that your hard work, your vision, you're staying on solid ground, your discerned decisions, and your willingness to innovate, to collaborate, to bring forth your own very unique genius has made this possible for somebody else to have a car of their dreams, or a home of their dreams, or to raise a family, and to send, some of them will send their families to college and things like that. And I know that you've been a part of that you've been part of raising them. So as I was listening to that, I thought, this is like the way you fathered people. This is the way you father and grandfather now, coming into this next phase of our life, that those next generations of those are coming. I know it also included you opening your business up to train, to model, to teach, to bring in interns there, these college kids. That's a benefit to me. That's what we get to do when we're on in a sustainable, thriving, solid business, that you can bring folks in there to be a part of their education process. It doesn't always have to be about what it's going to get you, or how it's going to bring something to the bottom line, which can't be overlooked, of course. So there's other ways I know too that you are dedicated to. It's just like you grew up in a poor community or a poor environment, a poor family, without realizing you're poor or even making it bad, that you intend to shift some of that for people so that they see a way, just like you did as a kid, that there's another option for them. So creating this wealth and building wealth makes possible things that other folks wouldn't have, including scholarships, which you want to speak about that. That is your intent to provide, and actions and steps that you've taken to make sure that kids that want to get to college, that may or may not have some way, that couldn't see a way like you and I did, or would be too afraid of testing that way, that you're mindful and intentional about making sure if they want to get an education or internshipping and things like that, that they can. And this hard work has made that possible. So speak about that, like what your heart, how your heart is in that.
So 2 things, Martha. One is there's a local community college here, Jefferson Technical and Community College. And so I got on, I started doing volunteer work for them because they had this Jubilee every year where they raise money for scholarships. So, I stuck my toe in, and before long, I'm the chairman of the Jubilee committee, and then they put me on the college board for that committee. So now I help every year. We have a fundraiser, and we raise money for these kids, and some of them are adults. I mean, older adults as well. But we raise enough money every year. Like last year, we gave away 30 some scholarships, full scholarships. These are people that don't have money to go to school. They want to, but, you know, they might have kids, you know, no jobs. You know, they're in tough situations, and we make that possible. So I'm really dedicated to that. And that's one of the things I do. And the other is I got on the Miami University Foundation Board, also where, you know, where I went to school. And before that, I started a scholarship, and I give, or my money gives scholarships to 2 kids every year up at Miami. And I'm really proud of that. And I'm actually starting another one so that we can get more people involved. And then, you know, when it's the end of my time, all the money that I've accumulated over time will go into that scholarship fund. And it'll be a pretty big one. So those are two of the ways in which, you know, I'm trying to help kids get into school that, you know, want to be there and just need some help.
Mm-hmm. Tell me again, what makes you feel rich?
That's a hard question to answer.
Mm-hmm.
Have I ever told you an answer to that?
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, Edwene Gaines is a prosperity teacher, Reverend Edwene Gaines, and I've used her spiritual practices for many years, which include for this podcast, forgiveness, and having goals and taking action steps toward that goals, and knowing whatever you do has to have purpose to it. So that, and purpose described for me, and I don't know how she would describe it, is that there's some element of joy in what we do, and that we are growing ourselves. We're growing ourselves, that there is something pulling us, an impulse, a vision pulling us, and hard work pulling us, and a possibility pulling us. And the other thing is that we're crystal clear that it's beneficial to others. And you've laid it out here well, Dave, in this little time that we've had today, with the purpose of your own life and what a purposeful life you're living, with all those elements in place, and what potential then you have demonstrated and manifested for other people to live a purposeful life also. A life with meaning, a life with some element of joy in it, a life that grows them, and a life that is absolutely clear that others are benefited by this. So I don't think I could do it justice, but it struck me as you can go something as simple. And so Edwene used to say, eating olives made her feel rich, because in her little young mind, rich people had olives. So when she was working to feel rich or to manifest, when she was trying to build money for something, she would go to the store and get her the littlest jar of olives. Even if she had to do without something else, she would go get that little jar of olives because it made her feel rich. And I know for you that you have said being able to go in the store and buy what you want to buy.
That's true.
That you get to go in a store and buy what you want to buy. I also know that you seek value, that you still use coupons, and that you still use buy one, get one. And I think it's the most sane, sensible, causative, generative thing that we can do, that says, I've got a lot of money I want to create. I've got a lot of cause I want to put forth, and I really want to set up 100 more kids, 1,000 more kids, 1,000 more scholarship, whatever it is. That would be something you would look back at the end of your life or today, like we have today, and say, I'm really glad that I did that. And I believe that we'll be glad we did it, or we'll wish we had of.
Let me just tell you something, Martha, because nobody knows this. So we're going to set this up tomorrow. It's going to be finalized next week or the week after. We're not rushing anything, but I'm really bothered by what's going on with the Black Lives Matter movement and how African Americans are treated in this country. It's really gets me to my core. So we try to figure out how at Flavorman we can make a difference. So we talk to our African American employees and coworkers, and what we're going to do is we're going to set up a program. Since we have a laboratory and we have a classroom, we're going to set up a program for kids Flavorman's located in a very poor part of Louisville. We're going to work with the school system and recruit. I don't have all the details, but we're going to recruit a number of of students from probably 8th through 12th grade. And we're going to have them come in for a camp. We're going to call it a beverage boot camp. And we're going to have them come in and learn how to make a beverage. But along the way, we'll get to teach them science, like what's pH, what's specific gravity, those kinds of things, which will be, are really important to them, but to learn science, really scientific things. Mm-hmm. And we're going to do that with African-American kids in the local neighborhood. And we're going to have our African-American coworkers teach them. Mm-hmm. So we're going to help them. We're going to set up we do classes for other things as well. So we're going to help set up these classes, but we want these students to be taught by people who look and act like them. And so we're all, the rest of us are taking a backstage in this, and we're going to set up this program. We're going to do it, it's going to be a week at a time. We're going to try it for the first time, figure out what we did right, what we did wrong, and then we're going to set it up so it's a program that we can do it as many times as possible during the year. But it's another way just to give somebody a chance, because oftentimes that's all somebody needs, is just a chance.
It's true, Dave. Thank you for that. That's very exciting. Of course, you know how I am. I want to jump right in there on that somehow. So it also, what kids will get to witness, honey, and experience besides science and business protocols and practices and possibilities and creation is respect and dignity and appreciation and honor and devotion and hard work, and somebody there to be their guardrails, their little bumper rails for that. So that makes my tail wag in major kind of ways. So thank you for that, and for anything like that along the lines that you'll do going forward. So that little tears come in there. I also know that you've got that you are constantly looking for places, ways that you've served relative to Louisville's compassionate city and it being the most compassionate city. So I've led projects back there in 2012 that you jumped right in on, that you came in wholeheartedly in that ranges from giving food, sharing your space, giving up the space, and all matters of things like that. I know, as you said, that you've located your business in a place in town that's a poorer part of town. That was all strategic. Like other entrepreneurs and business owners wouldn't have gone into that part of town. And you did that strategically. You did that intentionally, innovatively, collaboratively, and that's paid off for you. And that you've had returns on that, many ways that I've witnessed over the years. So speak a little bit about that, like how your business has been recognized and how you've been recognized as this entrepreneur in the small business arena, even regionally and statewide, and then nationally, out of some of these choices that you made, what you inherited from that hard work and your bravery and courage to do it differently.
So we bought this. So we were located in the suburbs originally, and in 2005, I decided I want to do something different. Again, I think I got bored with the location, and it just seemed like I was doing the same thing every day, kind of a thing. So we decided we're going to get our own building. It's going to be downtown. So we looked around. We looked at 40 buildings, and we found one, and it was a gem. There was no electricity and no water. There were no windows or doors. It happened to be in bankruptcy and foreclosure, and I thought, this is it. And I remember we brought down, so we bought the building, and we brought all the employees down to show them. So I took everybody out to lunch downtown, and so we stopped off at that building. And I had to buy everybody flashlights so they could get around the building. And so we get in there, and one of my coworkers, Marlena, she goes, well, when are you going to start tearing it down? Oh, we're not. This is this is it. We could fix this up, but I knew I could literally see our company in this space, and it was a mess. The roof leaked, and it was bad. And so we fixed this thing up, and all the buildings around us were abandoned except one. And when I say around us, so it was a 24,000 square foot building, and we were on the corner, and every single building that we could touch or see was abandoned, boarded up. It was bad, but I kept thinking, it wasn't that far from the post office. It wasn't far from the gas and electric company. and just a block away was a federal court building. I thought, you know, this building it's just misplaced. It's just in the wrong place. And if we put money into this, you know, maybe other people will. And that's exactly what happened. Some of those buildings were torn down because they were really derelict buildings. And now, you know, then we got recognized by the city. They started coming around. They started bringing people, companies that were thinking about relocating to Louisville. They were bringing them by and showing, you know, what, you know, urban renewal was, what you could do with an old building if you wanted to. And so we kind of became a bit of a darling for a while at the city, as they loved what we did. And then, you know, the newspaper there asked us to get into some, they wanted us to apply for some contest they were having. It wasn't a contest, but it was the 50th fastest growing companies in Louisville or something. So we entered that. I don't remember what number we were, but we were some number. We were growing. And then we got some other recognition. The Small Business Administration called us, and they wanted to work with us, help us do some exporting, international exporting. So we were working with them, and they sent our name in for a bit of a contest that they had. Contest isn't the right word, but recognition for Small Business of Kentucky. And so we had some paperwork to fill out. And I remember thinking, like, honestly, winning some kind of an award is not my thing. It's nice, but I don't really care about it. But anyway, I filled out this paperwork because they really wanted us to, and we won and got recognized as Kentucky Small Business of the Year. And so then when you get that award, then you go to the national awards ceremony. So we went to Washington, D.C., and the awards were given out by the SBA administrator, Maria Contreras-Sweet, who was awesome, and also Mark Cuban. So some of you might know Mark Cuban from Shark Tank. And we knew a little bit about Shark Tank because one of our customers went there. And he didn't know us. But anyway, he was giving out the awards, and I was recognized as the third. Me and the company were the third in the nation as far as ranking for Small Business Administration. And we've been recognized for other things in Louisville as well as one of the nicest places to work and these kinds of things. So, and it's really nice, and the employees love it. So if they love it, I love it too. So, you know, we fill out these things occasionally and we win.
I feel like we also, I'm sorry, honey.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
I wanted to also, like, there's so many things I want to put forth here. And it's like, I feel like I'm fanning a flame of people's dreams, and I'm fanning a flame of inspiration and what could be and what could be possible. Because even though that getting that award may not be that much today, that's not his mojo, but it could be somebody else's mojo. And it's like to be published in these papers and on these TV shows and all this media that you've gotten. So just lay that out so that could be somebody's inspiration to stay their course, to keep the hard work going, to keep making sensible, sane decisions, to do things that take courage, some things that might be coming to them. So just throw in here some examples of where you've shown up in print media, TV media, and what you've been, how you've been acknowledged through that kind of publicity. Okay.
So I've been in Forbes magazine, me and the company. They wanted to talk about how you develop a beverage and those kinds of things. And I've been in the New York Times a couple of times. One was talking about Flavorman, and one they wanted to know my opinion on some things going on in the alcoholic beverage industry. We've been in Wired magazine. I mean, really, we've been in a lot of magazines. We've been in CNN. I remember this was one year. It was tax day, so I remember it. And it was I can't remember the year exactly, but I was at work and I had my taxes. I'm always the last day, right? Kind of a person. I had all these papers. I did it at work because we have these long lab benches, and I laid all my paperwork out there, and I'm trying to get my taxes done. And my phone kept ringing, and I didn't answer it. I wanted to get my taxes done, and finally I answered it. And it was a friend of mine saying, "Hey, you're on CNN." And like, what? So we have a TV screen at work. So I turned the TV on, and it was on one of those loops where it was like every 10 minutes or 15 minutes, they were doing a story on Flavorman and Moonshine University. I couldn't believe it. And, you know, in talking about, you know, these stepping stones that I was talking about with my grandmother, that was a stepping stone, because after that, you know, some of these other magazines heard about us. We were in Bloomberg magazine. And then we ended up on television. We were on the Travel Channel. We were on a show called Moonshiners. We were on a couple of times, and we did that show with Andrew Zimmern on it, talk about bizarre foods.
Yes.
And they did like a 20-minute segment on us or something. It was unbelievable, really. And then last, and I'll stop bragging, and I'd like to tell these stories, to be honest with you, is one of our customers went to Shark Tank. We helped them develop this drink that was in a box, like a bag in a box, and we push a little nozzle and it comes out. And they got Mark Cuban to invest $1 million in their product. And then after that, then Shark Tank has a show called After the Tank, where they follow those stories of some of these investments. And so we were on After the Tank, came to Louisville, and showed how we were helping this customer make new flavors for their line. And they did a 25-minute segment. It was like the biggest commercial on Flavorman ever. It was unbelievable. So those are a few things. We were on ABC News. Remember that, Martha, when ABC News came around? And, they did a little segment on soles for souls. Yeah, soles for souls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's another example of the weaving that Dave and I've done together over the years. Anytime I've got a project, he's always yes. Like, what can he do? What can he do? That his employees have gotten involved, been very generous over time. So this has not come without regard for humanity. So I think it comes, Dave, for your fulfilling your assignment as human and fulfilling a divine calling for that, some impulse in you, and absolutely capitalizing on, utilizing the gifts that you've been given, the gifts that you were empowered with and impressed with here, and that you found very, very high level, extraordinary ways to express from that impression of that divine impression in you. And it's something to witness, I tell you. So we'll do this again. Stay tuned. We may have podcast episode 2, because these stories that Dave's got about this are very powerful. And it'll be eventually the 6 degrees of separation will be at play, because somebody will know, oh, I saw that, or oh, I heard that, or oh, I know about them, or I read about them, or even that it gets closer and closer. It could be you, the listener, who says, hey, I'm going to go to that college, or hey, I know now that there's scholarship funds available, or hey, I know that there's a place for me to get down there this summer in Louisville sometime to go figure out a program. So till we meet again, my friend, Godspeed to you, and may everything you do be realize delight, joy, purpose, and infinite potential. And to contact Dave, his email address is Dafoe, Dafoe, Dafoe @flavorman.com. And of course, you can go right to the website, read all about them, see all this publicity he's reported to with flavorman.com, this Moonshine University, and tell me the other logic.
Flavor Logic, which is brand new. In the next podcast, I promise to include how he re-innovated just this year to keep this business thriving on solid ground, keep these employees employed, and make his contributions to the economy and to these families and to these lives that are his employees under his company corporate umbrella too. So to be continued. For now, thank you for listening. MarthaCreek.com to contact me. Appreciate what you're doing in the world, whoever's listening, and Godspeed and infinite potential to you as you carry on.